All right, so the numbers are pretty much the same as yesterday coming out of Alberta. A lot of cases, 127, but the active cases were down by about 15 to 20 or so. So that's good news. That's basically all you're looking for. The amount of new cases isn't really the big deal. It's how many, the difference between how many recover and how many actual new ones come up. So as long as the active case number is going down, that's pretty much the only thing to be worried about. But more importantly, you got hospitalization numbers, which were down again. ICU also steady. Death, I don't think there was any new deaths. Again, they're testing a lot of people, almost 8,400 people. That's something to be keeping an eye out for as well. As far as the rest of Canada goes, Ontario, the numbers were down, but I think yesterday they went back up a little bit. So again, it's the same thing I've been pointing out too. Same thing for Quebec too. I think their numbers are pretty much steady. No big uptick, no big downtick. They're pretty much steady. So again, it's just a thing I've been pointing out that the whole mask garbage, I don't think it clearly had much of, if any, influence on the case totals. I think maybe slight negative or effect on the spread, but I don't think I it's rather obvious that it has very little effect. And it really, I mean, Edmonton, I know now as of August 1st, they're having it all mandatory mask garbage. I don't know exactly who it applies to. I know a lot of public services it does, but I don't know who else exactly. But again, the main point being is that where is the evidence? We're well over 3 weeks of mandatory masks in Toronto, and yet there's no clear downtick there. I know a lot of Quebec has had it. I know there's other areas that have, I mean, like half of U.S. states have it too. That's the other thing to point out too. Everyone talking about, oh, well, the numbers out of the states are, I mean, speaking of the states, we can go to there. Um, the numbers haven't really trended down there over the last, few weeks. And there's I'm not most states, but about half of states have had the mandatory mask stuff going on for over 2 weeks. Like, where is the downtick? Again, this is the complete lie of the whole mask garbage. And it's like I say, I'm not completely 100% no questions asked. You shouldn't wear a mask, but I would say it's probably 90% there's no need whatsoever. And like I say, getting into it, I mean, just briefly, the numbers out of the states pretty much the same as yesterday. Almost the exact same amount of cases, exact same amount of deaths. The death numbers have been pretty high over the last few days, which is concerning. But again, the numbers out of the states are inflated to a degree. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, talking about the whole mask thing, I seen this on Twitter yesterday, and this is something that I've heard doctors talk about before. I do listen to some doctors on YouTube that I've heard bring this up. And this says my daughter, 19 years old, healthy, frontline worker at a huge grocery store chain, started feeling sick about 2 weeks ago. Side and back pain, nausea, chest pain. Primary doc sent her for a chest X-ray. Something lit up on her right side. Sent for an MRI, CAT scan, ultrasound of back and abdomen. Nothing. While at work, was unable to breathe. Chest pain, rushed her to the ER, quarantined, tested for the virus, young by herself because no one can be with her. Turns out it was pleurisy. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but an infection of the outside of the lining of the lungs. They basically tell her it's because she has been wearing a mask for over 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, breathing in her own bacteria, carbon dioxide caused an infection, and now she is in severe pain. Has to be off work with no pay, but you won't see this on social media or the mainstream media, especially. She's 19, healthy, and now is bedbound and struggling to breathe, antibiotics, steroids, breathing treatment. So again, this is something that I'm not sure if I've talked about it here, but I know I've heard doctors talk about one of the many problems with masks is that you're rebreathing in your own bacteria. And not only that, if you're doing it for extended periods of time, it is not going to be good for you. And I really don't get the pushback from this because the mainstream medical community, in March and April, this is their opinion of it. The mainstream medical, I mean, even the WHO did not suggest mask wearing up until recently. So again, the overwhelming majority of the medical community has disagreed with the way things are currently going for the vast majority of time. Like it's literally only changed within the last couple months. And I think it's rather obvious that it's impossible to sell people on the lockdowns anymore. I mean, for two reasons. I mean, two main reasons. Number one, it'll literally destroy the economy. It's already had terrible, terrible effects, but we would literally be. I don't even want to even think about how bad things would be if we were still locked down, or at least largely locked down. There is still some restrictions, a lot of them pointless, but you get the point. But and the other big thing too is, okay, so they've switched from shutting down the economy to wanting to force masks on people. And I think the next big one will be, assuming they come out with it, which is probably unlikely within the next 6 months or so. I think it's going to be the vaccine. And I think the goal is if they can get a vaccine done by like midwinter, then that'll be what'll be forced on people. This even probably even more heavily than masks. Maybe I mean comparable, considering masks technically are mandatory for a lot of reasons, but there is exceptions, I believe. But again, the whole point being is that there's no science whatsoever to back up what these people are saying, and I mean, getting to this point, from L Devon on Twitter, Calgary face mask bylaw states it relies on March 11th WHO statement, but on April 6th, the WHO states no need for healthy people to wear masks. Calgary bylaw is unconstitutional only based on anecdotal calls to the mayor, and not on science and law. Constitutional breach. Now, again, I'm not a legal expert, but I do know that that Rocco Galati, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce his name, he is challenging the whole mandatory mask garbage and a lot of this, even the lockdown stuff. So that's something that's encouraging to see. But the whole point being, like I say, is that there's no scientific evidence to back up the idea that healthy people should have to wear masks. There is no evidence whatsoever. And the fact that they haven't provided that just goes to show that there isn't any. Like I see all these idiot sheep on social media, and you point that out and they're like, "Oh, show me the evidence." I'm like, "No, that's not where the burden of proof is. The burden of proof is on the people that literally want to force you to do something if you want to leave your house. That the burden of proof is on you." And again, the fact that they never actually cite any actual evidence just goes to show that is, and the one big thing that they point out is somewhat anecdotal, but they'll point out, oh, Japan, they'll point out the Japan argument, but yet they don't tell you Japan never locked down. Again, these are the same people that were the biggest supporters of the lockdowns, but yet now all of a sudden they're praising Japan's approach. Like, again, like, how ignorant can you possibly be? Like, seriously, how ignorant can you possibly be? It's insane. Like, it's absolutely insane that these people can hold positions, and a lot of them probably not even notice it. Like, they're so ignorant, it's not even funny that they hold a position that completely contradicts a position they held a few months ago. Like, it's absolutely insane. This is from StixX and Emmer666 on Twitter, also on YouTube. So, but anyway, he says, liberal, a person who loves taxes other people pay, diversity other neighborhoods include, and protests that aren't in their town. Now, again, he points out a very good point that, again, these leftists love to, I mean, they love taxes and helping the poor because they're so compassionate. But yet, I have literally never seen an example of one of these big leftists giving more money than they're required to pay. Like, there is nothing stopping you from paying more taxes than you're required to pay. The dollar amount of taxes that you're supposed to pay is just the minimum requirement. If you write a number larger than that number, they're not going to, I mean, they may try to, but if you make it explicitly clear that you want to pay more, they will take the money. I mean, there's also nothing stopping you from donating extra money to charity. This is the other thing too that I cannot stand, that the studies clearly back up that people on the right are a lot more likely to give money to charities and to volunteer their time to help charities. And these are the people that supposedly hate the poor. No, this is the thing that I point out ad nauseum. And again, people just don't like to listen, but it's clearly backed up because we have literally endless amounts of examples in that what the left accuses people of, it's generally just them projecting. It's, in fact, it's almost always just them projecting. It's, oh, you hate the poor, But yet you look at the fact that conservatives give more money to charity. Again, if you hated the poor so much, why do you give more money to charity than the group that claims to claim to help the poor so much? Again, all these massive amounts of projection. Again, the left, oh, we want to help the poor, but yet they support the welfare state that just enables people to be poor. Again, it's just absolutely insane. The amount of projection and contradiction that's going on is absolutely, like I say, it's utterly insane. But again, he points out too the whole diversity thing too. I mean, you look at all these big celebrities and politicians that, oh, we love diversity, but yet they don't even support it. I mean, you look at a lot of these mainstream media, personalities, Obama, Don Lemon. These kind, I'm not mean to pick on either one of them, but they both live in overwhelmingly like 95% white neighborhoods. Like again, if you love diversity so much, why don't you actually practice what you preach? And again, this is the easy way to tell if people actually believe what they believe, is if they practice what they preach. This is an easy way to tell. And it doesn't have to be 100% ironclad, but if there's a couple slight contradictions, maybe, but like blatant and utterly insane contradictions should not be accepted, like to any degree whatsoever. And the last thing too, the whole protest thing too. I mean, you had all these liberal celebrities, and I mean even the mayor in Seattle, like, oh, we love protests and we love the protests and all this garbage, but yet when it came for them, all of a sudden they're against it too. Like it's just sheer and utter, it's virtue signaling, and this is the problem with the left, is that they value above all else the ability to virtue signal. And what does that mean for anybody who doesn't know what it means? It is valuing above all else appearing virtuous, and keyword appearing virtuous, and that they don't actually care about actually being virtuous. They don't actually care about the actions or the consequences of their actions. They could care less if the exact opposite of what the intended outcome happens. They could care less about that. All they care about is how they appear. I mean, Justin Trudeau is literally like the epitome of someone who virtue signals. Not to mention people who like virtue signaling tend to be people that are at least slightly narcissistic, but again, that's a different topic in and of itself. They tend to be a little bit different when it comes to narcissism, is what people traditionally think of. But again, that's just the other thing I wanted to bring up. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is from Spencer Fernando, and he again, so I'll just read it and talk a little bit about it. He says, "Does anybody actually believe that there are people out there who want to serve in the Royal Canadian Navy but have decided not to because they have the title seaman or seamen?" What a total clown show. And again, it's just virtue signaling, woke social justice BS culture at the very finest. And then he puts out a good point. He's like, do they have one example of someone who didn't join the Royal Canadian Navy because of that? Like, did they have one example? Like, they didn't provide any. And they'll probably come up with some idiot social justice warrior, pink hat, pink hair, pronouns in their Twitter bio kind of idiots. And again, not that I have anything specific against those kind of people. They just tend to be rather ignorant of reality, I guess is a good way of putting it. But anyway, like I say, he makes out a good point. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, and this is the problem too with the people that are giving in to the cancel culture and the destroying the statues and all this woke leftist social justice warrior garbage, is that they're not going to stop at the Confederate statues. I mean, they've already demonstrated that. They're not going to stop at Confederate statues. They're not going to stop at defunding the police. They're not going to stop at anything because their movement is largely pointless. They don't have a clear and direct path. They don't have a career and direct wants and needs. Their main goal is just to destabilize society. I mean, that's what communists want to do. They destabilize society and take over from after the impending chaos. Basically, that's what the goal is. Because again, the goal isn't ending racism. I mean, it's so obvious it's not even funny. Again, if they actually cared about racism, they wouldn't put all their attention towards the 10 unarmed black men killed by cops. They would be a little bit more worried about the several thousand blacks killed by other blacks, and the million blacks that are still enslaved to this day, the hundreds of thousands of people that suffer every year because of the consequences of the welfare state. Those are the things they would actually be worried about if they actually cared about black people, but they don't. They care at the utmost importance is the 10 unarmed black men that are killed by police every year. More blacks die a year of constipation and falling down stairs and crazy stuff like that. But again, they'll have you think that racism from police officers is the biggest issue facing them. Like, it's absolute clown show, like absolute and utter clown show, that people actually fall for this garbage. So anyway, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. And last few things, check me out on Twitter, Parler, and BitChute. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.